I'm just a better person if I'm meditating, if I'm doing TBM workshops, if I'm journaling. I'm just a better person. I'm just happier. It's always been beneficial when I go with the flow of life. I'm resilient, I can rely on myself, and my happiness is in my hands.
From To Be Magnetic, this is the Expanded Podcast with your host, Lacey Phillips.
And your host, Jessica Gill.
As the leading destination for neural manifestation, we dispel the woo-woo in order to help you create real, tangible results based on neuroplasticity, psychology, epigenetics, and energetics. Our goal is to normalize the practice of manifestation and empower you to get into the driver's seat of your life in order to manifest the experiences, relationships, and things that most align with your authenticity. And by pressing play, the process begins.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Expanded. Jessica here. A lot of you have been asking about how to surrender to the timing of your manifestation. We always talk about how when you craft your manifestation list, choose something that feels believable in the next 6 to 12 months. It feels slightly out of reach. It feels like a stretch to step into, but believable in the next 6 to 12 months. Now, if you have been doing this work diligently and passing tests and expanding and unblocking, when you start getting around that 6-month timeline, you start to get a little bit itchy of when that manifestation is going to come through. Maybe even you just jumped off a cliff or have passed a lot of big tests after some serious unblocking. And you're looking around wondering where your manifestation is. It can be really easy to put your manifestation on a pedestal, that your life is on hold until that thing comes through. But actually, the way to navigate waiting for your manifestation is to enjoy the present. How can you experience the fullness of your life in this moment in time without putting it on pause? And that actually brings the flow to connect with your manifestation, while also unblocking, expanding, and taking aligned actions and following those pings. And that is exactly what today's process guest has done. Stephanie is on to talk about how she navigated from exiting a divorce in her 30s to manifesting her absolute dream partner that was everything on her list, creating a family with him, and then going on to launch her dream career. Part of that process was her needing to take a leap of faith to connect with her authenticity and who she truly was, and be okay in those in-between phases, those waiting phases for your manifestation, and not settling and going back to old patterns. Meet your new expander, Stephanie.
And now, a word from our partners.
Whenever the seasons change or I'm in a period of high stress, I always make sure to double down on my immune support. And 2 products that I've absolutely been loving and cannot live without is the Beekeeper's Natural Propolis Immune Support Throat Spray and the Propolis Plus Vitamin C Liposomal. Propolis is a powerful combination of plant entry resin and enzymes made by the bees. The bees use it to protect their hive and fight against germs from outside invaders and making sure everyone is healthy and safe within the hive. When we use it, it helps support our immune system in the same way. It has vitamin C, iron, zinc, B vitamins. It's high in antioxidants, polyphenols, flavonoids, helps to fight free radicals, oxidative stress. It's studied to be antimicrobial and antifungal to help fight germs. This thing is a freaking powerhouse. I absolutely love using the throat spray during the workday with phone calls and podcasts and after fatiguing my voice. When my vocal cords start to feel weak and run down, I love using their throat spray to just boost my immune and support that entire area. It's also fantastic before you go out in public or if you know you're going to be in a high germ area. And then recently, as I've been moving, my stress levels have been going up, trying to manage everything going on. And so I've been doubling down on their liposomal packets. I've been taking one a day just to really give myself that boost of vitamin C. And I'm not kidding, my skin has been glowing. If you listen to any of our skin podcast episodes, vitamin C is a key nutrient in helping to support the skin. And I've noticed taking it internally in the liposomal form with the addition of the propolis has been game changer. So join me and up-level your medicine cabinet this season with clean, natural, effective products that actually work. Beekeepers Natural is offering you an exclusive discount code if you go to beekeepersnaturals.com/TBM or enter code TBM, all caps, for 20% off your order. Again, that's beekeepersnaturals.com/TBM or use code TBM, all caps, for 20% off your order. They are also available at Target, Whole Foods, Walmart, CVS, and Walgreens. But I know personally, I like to order online because 1, I get to apply our discount code, and 2, I get to get bulk pack. So I can get multiple of the throat spray at once, which gives me a bigger discount in the long run. And as always, you can check out the show notes for a direct link to any of the products mentioned.
All right, on to the episode.
I'm so excited to be here today with Stephanie, process guest, really diving into so much: motherhood manifestations, career manifestations, relationship manifestations, moving manifestations, all the things. And honestly, one theme that kept coming up when we talked on the phone and then also looking at your submission, this idea of the trust muscle. How many times you had to take a leap of faith on yourself, whether it was career or moving or relationships or whatever it may be. So we want to get into that today as well. But welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you. I'm so excited. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Okay, so what's your big 3 in astrology? Sun, moon, rising.
Cancer, Aries, and Pisces.
Oh, love it. Very intuitive, but also has that strong Aries energy to be like, let's move it along.
Yes, it's a good combo. Good combo for me.
And what would you say is your cultural background and upbringing and something from your childhood that really informs who you are today?
So I grew up in Johnston, Rhode Island, so small town in the smallest state, and everyone there is Italian. So there's a lot of Italian Americans. My dad's side was Brazilian and Portuguese, and my mom's side was Italian. So definitely grew up around Italian culture, food, customs, just kind of that way of life. I would say as a child, I was very, very dreamy and free-spirited. So that definitely informed my life. I would say that I was full of ideas and always asking what if or why not. So really testing those boundaries. So I think that definitely informed me as an adult because I kind of had to rein that in and finding the balance of really just still being myself. So almost like the theme of my life has really been figuring out how to balance the free spirit in me while still figuring out who I am, what I want, and then going to get it.
So in human design, I'm going to guess you probably have the open crown chakra. Do you know?
Yep.
If you do?
Yeah, and manifesting generator. So
okay, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I think when you have the open crown, I've learned, because I have that too, it's like you have ideas literally all the time. And especially when you get inspiration from different things, like I could be at a museum looking at a piece of art and I'm like, I know what to do in the next workshop. They don't necessarily connect, but it's like the inspiration from one just like channels into an idea from another. Do you find that for yourself?
yes, absolutely. Especially with business ideas. I've had to actually do like a 1-page business, like lean business model for any idea that comes up, just so I feel like the idea thought is not wasted. But if I don't have all of the, components figured out right now, that's fine. I'm just going to tuck it away and maybe the idea will complete itself later. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. That's fine. But I've tried to organize it that way.
I love this. I just have a random note on my notes app that's like, seed business, like random stuff. And I'm like, I'm never going to follow these. And sometimes I think the ideas for anyone who, in general, regardless of your crown chakra or whatever, if you resonate with getting a lot of ideas and inspirations for things and then feeling really overwhelmed with like, where do I start? Where do I go with this? I love the lean business plan idea. So it's like, okay, let's fortify. Is this an idea that I'm supposed to move forward with? Or can I just let this be here? Or sometimes I feel like the ideas just come to share with others. Sometimes it's like, this actually isn't for me at all. But like, if someone starts talking about wanting a seeds business, then I can share with them my idea. You don't always have to be the vehicle through which all the ideas come.
That's so true. And I feel like I approached the work a little bit like that at the beginning because I would just be like, oh my God, I have to unblock this. I have to unblock this. How am I ever going to? It felt daunting at the beginning, but I actually would write down anything that would kind of come up that was a limiting belief, or if I felt like it was like a mental roadblock for me. So I would write it down and put it in a notebook, and that was it. And then I felt like sometimes I'd go back and periodically check on things, and maybe I would have already unblocked a bunch. So it didn't actually feel as daunting. So that was comforting to me, knowing that I can revisit this and I don't have to conquer everything in a day. And same thing with business ideas or anything really. Even if you're renovating your house and you look at your to-do list, I think that's a good way to do it.
I love that idea, especially when it comes to blocks, because I think so many people, especially if they're brand new, they'll go into the TBM work and they'll start pulling back. They're like, oh, there's a limiting belief. There's a block. So many people go in and they're like, okay, should I unblock all of them right now? But my biggest through line is like, what are the places that you're being tested in right now? Maybe you had one test with it, but are you repeatedly being tested on that one thing? That's the block you want to look at right now. And honestly, when you go through that one, you'll probably knock out a few limiting beliefs within that anyways. So I love that idea of just listening out and be like, cool, it's there. I can refer to it, but I don't need to tackle it all right now. Okay, so how did you find To Be Magnetic? Where were you in life at that time?
Yeah, so I found To Be Magnetic. I was 34, just been divorced. I was in a relationship for 10 years that ended. So I moved to New York. I was living on my own, starting over, really trying to find out who I was. So I just came across the podcast and I listened to one episode and immediately listened to all of them. I listened to one episode and then just started from the beginning because it was exactly what I needed. When Lacey started talking about authentic code, just listening to other people's lives always was so interesting to me. I just think that's so interesting, listening to other people's lives and how they are so passionate about what they do. So I loved the podcast. It was very powerful.
Speak a little bit about divorcing at that age too, because we have a few community members who are in their 30s or 40s who are at that age range where they want to have kids and they're in a relationship, a long-term relationship, and they're realizing that maybe this is not the match for me. How did you jump through that fear to exit that relationship, and how did you know it wasn't for you?
Yeah, it was really tough because I actually knew that I wanted to be married and I knew that I wanted to have a baby. So to get divorced kind of is the opposite direction. So, I had met him when I was in my early 20s and I had no idea who I was. I didn't even know that I didn't know who I was. It was wild. So, I was making decisions based on just kind of going with the flow. And I met this nice guy and this sounded great. And he really knew what he wanted. And that was great. And that still is great. But I just didn't know what I wanted. So I kind of just went along with someone else's dream. And then it got to a point where I didn't know it at the time, I was flooded with expanders. So flooded with all of a sudden people coming into my life as coworkers or friends. And I just kind of saw how they lived and it was just different. I kind of wanted a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And, it's not what he wanted. And that's fine too, because if he compromised, it wouldn't have been right for him. Yeah, so we ended the relationship. So I'm 34. I'm starting over in New York. I didn't know it then and have the terms, but I really have used the worst case scenario over and over in my life. So I thought, there's a chance that I'm going to be divorced and not meet anyone else and not have a baby. That's definitely a chance. But I'm okay with that. And I was just getting excited about what maybe that life would look like. So I think having a balance of what the possibilities are, you can get excited about both outcomes and you really can be happy in multiple scenarios. And you can't fake that, right? So once you really start to know what you want or know that you need time to figure out who you are, the decision's a little easier.
I think what you said about that worst case scenario, so important. And it's honestly such a daunting title of the DI. I'm like, should we change it to like, you're
The
free or like,
possibilities, yeah.
yeah, the possibility DI. But it really is that exercise in like, okay, if you face your biggest fear or attachment, you're actually going to find that it wasn't that bad and that you had the tools, the means, the possibilities to move through it anyways. And every time I go in and do that DI, I'm like, oh yeah, I've like made this up in my head without even naming it, that this thing would be like the worst thing that could happen. And that's why I'm so afraid to take this action or move in this direction. But if that happened, I'd actually figure it out and it would be fine. It'd be different. It wouldn't be what I had expected or thought that I was going to do, but I would also be okay there too. And it gives you this freedom of, wow, life can be so beautiful in very different ways. And even often, the times that we let go of the reins is when it delivers in ways we can't even imagine.
Yeah, I think it also gave me confidence to know I can rely on myself. I'm resilient, I can rely on myself, and my happiness is in my hands.
How did the first dating test start going in New York? And how did that ultimately lead to your now partner?
It was wild. It was wild to even observe myself. It's so easy to say, oh, I dated all of these tests, but I was definitely a test for so many people too. I did not know what I wanted. So I learned a lot about myself. And I was able, with TBM, I was able to kind of observe myself when I was dating. A ton of things came up. You know, I'd get a lot of tests, a lot of people that weren't emotionally available. And it was funny, when I first started dating, people didn't know what they wanted. And I'm like, how do they not know what they wanted? But I didn't know what I wanted.
Did you know that at the time or only in hindsight looking back, you're like, oh, I wasn't even clear what I wanted?
Hindsight, yeah, for sure. I mean, the tests got pretty wild at the end. I had someone propose. This is after like 2 months of dating, and I wanted to get married. And I'm like, this is just not okay. And then right before COVID, I met a guy in person. I decided that we were just going to kind of like keep it casual and be friends. Like, you couldn't really date during COVID. Everyone was kind of in their house in New York. He was English and he decided that he was going to go back to England. So I ended up for 2 months going to London and renting my own place to try it out, thinking I'll kind of explore it with this guy. I have some friends there. I started looking around and I'm like, I like London. And I kind of had that feeling about London that I did once about New York. So I decided that I was going to try for a transfer. I was going to ask my company. I didn't even ask my company if I could go to London. I just literally went. We were working remotely. So I'm like, oh, they won't mind, not even thinking. And I ended up falling in love with London more than the guy, I guess. So I asked for a transfer for work. I got one. And then as soon as I moved here, my now husband was my third date. We met on Hinge, so it can happen.
Oh, yes. What I love about that too is you ran into the fire, so to speak, with that one guy that got you out to London. And this is why like that trust muscle is so important, because you could easily say like, well, it's too soon, I don't want to move and blah, blah, and like justify it away. But ultimately you felt called there. Now, did you know that you'd be called there because you personally were supposed to move to the city and then meet your person there? No, you couldn't have known that. But had you not run into the fire and sort of like popped by London, the chain of events would have never taken place. Actually, could you describe the feeling you had about going to London in that time, like discerning between a compulsion or an anxious attachment to that person versus your like ping that was like, no, this feels right?
I was excited about it. And it wasn't just to see him. I was just excited. I talked to a couple of my friends, and I'm always throwing out ideas to my friends. And I was just excited when I was talking about it. I actually used like the worst case scenario, like worst case, I get out of New York for a couple months. It's kind of tough here during COVID. I see some friends. There's so many parks and green spaces. Even if I have no social life when I'm there and it's just me walking in the park, it's a change of scenery. It just seemed like something that I had to do to try.
How do you feel like you started, you're talking about both in the marriage and then through these dating tests, not really understanding yourself, your authentic code. What did that look like? How did you start to cultivate those parts of you?
So I actually read books like on designing your own life, the value factor that you guys talk about a little, and then doing definitely the authentic code workshop in within To Be Magnetic. That really, really helped me. And then I started, it was like trial and error. So I just started to just take action. So it was almost like learning about myself was my manifestation that I wanted. So I would go to the ballet. I realized, wow, I really like this. This is meditative. I took some tennis lessons. I took golf lessons. I don't like golf. I didn't stick with it. So anything that I didn't like, I didn't continue with. I started fostering puppies, just really things just to kind of bring fun and love into my life. I just really wanted to honestly love myself and not wait for a guy to come in to feel so fulfilled. I thought if I'm going to be single, I need to cultivate like a rich, like fulfilling life. So what does that look like? So I kind of just built upon that.
I'm like sensing this idea of like experimentation in your life and how important that is and the openness to experiment. I was listening to Stephen Bartlett from the Diary of a CEO on, I think it was a Mel Robbins podcast. And he was saying everything in life is an experiment. And when you have two different choices in front of you, you have choices you can't come back from. And then you have decisions that you can just change your mind, like tennis. Like you can decide to do tennis and then say, okay, I don't want to do tennis anymore. And if you take those experiments and move faster, the faster you're going to know who you are, you're going to know what you like, you're going to have your blueprint of how you're going to move throughout the world. And I thought that was really fascinating. And I can sense the theme with you of, cool, let's keep trying things, let's stay open. It doesn't sound like there was a lot of overthinking.
No, it wasn't. And it's funny that you say that because on my list for a partner, I wanted to find someone to co-create our lives together. So I didn't even know at the time, I probably still don't, exactly what I want to do, what I want retirement to look like, what I want my next business venture to look like. But I know that I want to co-create with someone else. I want to make sure that we're making decisions together as a couple, supporting each other. And I always thought a limiting belief around that was always that I was immature, irresponsible because I felt that way. And it's really not. It's just my life's not linear. And that's what kind of makes it exciting and successful too. It's always been beneficial when I go with the flow of life.
How did that belief system, cultivating that, reflect back to what you learned in childhood and what your parents modeled for you, or what their perspective on that was? Like, are they people who are very linear in their actions, careers, etc., and you had to kind of be like, I'm a little bit different than this? What did that difference look like?
Huge difference. So luckily they would kind of poke fun about it and they would be like, where did you come from? What is this? You have all of these ideas. Where did they come from? So I grew up in a small town and everyone worked around that small town for the most part. My dad worked at the same company his whole life for the most part. My grandfather, my uncle, anyone around me that had a professional career worked at one job. And that's in my mind, that was the only way to success in my mind because I just wasn't around a lot of entrepreneurs or even small business owners really. That was really something I had to almost like overexpand myself when I was going from my corporate job to starting my own company and expanding that way.
Okay, so talk about the job, because the job is also parallel pathing with the relationship manifestation and then having a kid. So what did that timeline look like? And also, how did you know it was your partner? I feel like we're going to get that question too.
Yeah, so I worked for the same company, a huge corporation for 17 years. I knew what I wanted to be when I was in college, and I found basically like a training program that led to that position. I saw the safety in it. I was like, great. I'm 22. I have this job. Great, check. I'm just going to kind of go and climb the corporate ladder. I always craved to live in New York City, always craved it. As a child, before I went there, I would randomly say to my parents, I don't know why, just want to be in New York. So when I did get divorced, that was the first thing I did. I got transferred through my company, same job, to the New York office. And then same company, I got them to transfer me to London.
The perks of the corporate is that you can transfer to all
Exactly.
offices.
Yes, very grateful. I learned so much. So yeah, I'm grateful for that chapter. It probably lasted a little longer than it did. I just knew it was just getting away from that safety. Again, I was like, what's my plan? What am I going to do? I want to be successful and earn a lot of money, and I'm quitting my job. That's the opposite direction, but that's kind of a pattern.
It's a theme, yeah. Exactly what you want. You have to go in the opposite direction first, and then it redirects you.
Yeah, so I knew it was time to leave. I had gone on maternity leave and I came back, and the position required a lot of travel. And I just knew I just didn't want to travel anymore. I didn't want to be away from my husband, the baby. I was at the point where I didn't want my boss's job. I know I want to continue on, but what am I climbing for? I always knew I wanted my own company. During COVID, I did a sustainable entrepreneurship program at FIT. I took an idea through that class. I'm like, I'm going to do something with this one day. So I just decided that it's time to do something with the idea.
One of the number one questions I get asked is about my hair, and good hair starts with good scalp health. That is why I am obsessed with Acton Acres all-natural cold-pressed products for your hair and scalp. Your scalp has a microbiome just like your gut, so when it's out of balance, it impacts your hair health, which can lead to thinning hair, an oily scalp, flakes, dandruff, or even hair loss. So when it comes to having the best hair of your life, it truly starts at the scalp. And one of my new favorite products from them is their Daily Hydro Scalp Serum. It's the perfect product for anyone who's new into scalp care health. You can think about it like a scalp moisturizer. You wouldn't go a day without leaving moisturizer on your face, so why would you do the same with your scalp? This creates that protective barrier around your scalp, utilizing its lightweight, fast-absorbing formula to stay on. It's not something you need to wash off. You can do it after you shower, when your hair is wet, or when it's dry. Just kind of rub it in and allow it to saturate your entire scalp to keep it moisturized, healthy, and protecting that microbiome with amino acids to boost the shaft strength and barrier as your hair is growing. You can also use this in combination with any of their other serums. So I like to use the Scalp Renew before I shower. It helps remove any impurities and adds vitamins and minerals directly into the shaft of my hair. And then I manifested the Acton Acre shower head filter. So I got it 2 or 3 months back. It was so easy to install. You just put it right where your old shower head is. And it has been game changer, both for my skin and for my hair. If you are interested in trying out any of Acton Acres products, or you want to take their scalp quiz to understand what your hair type is and what products would be best for it, go to their website, actonacre.com. That's ACTANDACRE.com. And you can use the code TBM20 for 20% off. Again, that's code TBM20 for 20% off. Check the link in the show note. We can direct you right there, or go to actonacre.com. Okay, so I also love that during this trajectory, you're finding your person, you're starting your family, and at the same time, you're getting this ping to have a career shift. I feel like this is way more common than I've heard talked about, but when people have kids, it's almost like their whole priorities list is like, whoa, whatever I thought I wanted or was gearing towards before is suddenly, or maybe not so suddenly, very apparently not aligned. It's almost like you deepen your level of authenticity in a way because you see the world through such a different lens after having a kid. Do you feel like that was your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't enjoy traveling, I have to say, for a while. I love traveling if I'm going on vacation with family or friends, but I really didn't enjoy the travel. So when a baby came to the picture, I can do this. Life is going to be really busy and chaotic, and I don't want to do this. I knew that if I stayed in that job, I wouldn't have enough time to do self-care, to have time for myself, to allow my husband to have time for himself, it just didn't work anymore. After I had the baby, I figured out really quickly what my priorities were. I also thought a lot about what my story would be. So when kids get older, they're kind of asking questions about, you. And I always thought about my story. And if my son asked me, oh, so you must have loved your job. You were there for so long. How would I say, no, I didn't, but I just stayed. I kind of thought about that. I'm like, I'm not really being true to myself. And I really want him to be true to himself. So it kind of pushed me in a way.
I love that reframe too of, okay, it's easy to settle when it's just you. But then thinking about, well, what is the example I'm setting by playing small here? What is the example I'm setting by not following my dreams or pursuing what actually lights me up? What is the implicit message underlying there? That's such a interesting thing to think about with kids, or just even, with your partner, or what message that sends to your loved ones around you. And not that you should be living for them, but as added encouragement of keeping you in line with your integrity.
Exactly. If I was going to be away pursuing my passion, and that was just going to give me so much energy that when I got back home, I was just beaming with energy, that's different.
When did you finally prepare and was ready to jump off the cliff and leave your corporate job and go full force towards your company?
It was in the back of my mind, so I started to just save some money just in case, just to give myself the option. Got to a point where I would just log on and just feel like, oh, I don't want to do this. I was really grateful for the job. I worked with great people, and at the end of the day, I didn't want to do a bad job. My heart just wasn't into the job. So I really wanted to leave in a graceful way where they thought I was still doing a good job and I wasn't being resentful or just grumpy towards them. It's not their fault if the job's no longer right for me. So I would log on and say, oh, I just knew. I was like, this needs to happen probably quicker than I imagine.
And did you have a lot of expanders around that time? I know you have kind of a kismet story, getting some big expansion with certain people. How did that play out?
Yeah, so I started searching for them for sure. And then I started reaching out to people that had the same job as me. So in my mind, they had the same experience, same accolades as me. And, they had left and started their own company. So I started reaching out and just asking them if they could chat, have a coffee. Some of them, I didn't have their phone numbers. I reached out on Instagram. This one particular girl who I really admired from afar, she had successful businesses, worked in startups, super proud of her from just watching her on Instagram. And I reached out to her. I said, can we just chat? I want to talk about your experience. And she left, and she started asking me questions. And I felt like I was a resource for her as much as she was a resource for me in that moment. I just had that moment where I was like, oh, I can do this. And I've had that a couple times. And I think those are the expanders that really make a difference to me when I have that moment where I feel like I got this.
That expansion moment sensation, I think, is so key, because a lot of times people will say yeah, I have this long list of expanders, I'm expanded. But it's not just having the expanders on a checklist somewhere. It's actually having that internal reflective moment where it's like, wait a second, okay, they're doing this, I'm capable of that. I'm able to do my version of it. I do have that skill set or that value or that possibility is there for me too. I just wasn't thinking about it that way. We call it the aha moment where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I see it. So I love that you had such a clear one, because I think people, when they say they're expanded enough, it's but did you have that moment where you truly were like, I can do this?
I think that's happened a couple times. You can't force it. I've tried to force it, believe me. Mm-hmm. I've tried to kind of make little books of expanders. And I do find that listening to podcasts, though, help. Because sometimes someone will just say something in a certain way that just hits you. So I find that when I'm listening to people on podcasts that I don't know, that really helps.
I really like the podcast when it's not necessarily a celebrity, but almost like someone just real in the world. Those stories I feel like touch more because it feels more attainable or relatable. It doesn't feel like a PR pitch, like you're just getting to hear their life story. And when I hear those, I'm like, whoa, okay, cool.
And I like finding someone that I can relate to specifically. So in that case, I found someone that had the same job as me. And she went on to build several companies that were successful, but just she had the same job as me. So finding whatever it is in that moment that makes you unique or something you can really relate to, that's helped me.
Okay, now backtracking a little bit, how did you know that your husband was your person? And what was the process like in having your first kid?
So everything with my husband was pretty easy. It just felt so comfortable, but in an exciting way. We just had a lot in common. I mean, there was a lot of kismet things. Well, he has the same name as me, so his name is Stefano, and I'm Stephanie. So that was a little like the universe was like, don't miss this. But like our dogs had the same name. Just like there was just like some moments I was like, oh, this is interesting. I just knew that we could grow together. I think that was the biggest thing. We didn't have it all figured out. We could grow together. We had these conversations together about future, but then also had fun. It just seemed very, very natural. And our relationship happened really quickly. So we met when I was 37 and he was 36. So we met and dated for 6 months and then ended up moving in together. A few months after that, we decided, I think we're each other's person. So we talked about trying for a baby. So it's funny, when we first started dating, I had probably hid how spiritual I was from other relationships. People would probably be accepting of it. I just didn't feel comfortable sharing all the time. So I told him that I was like, we need to like sage the house and just almost kind of like consciously call in our baby. So I made him do all weird things like that. And we got pregnant right away.
Wow.
So it was beautiful. It was almost like he was like waiting for us to get together. So my husband's not from England either. It's just funny that we both kind of ended up here and then found each other.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And then how has life transformed? We want to share a lot more for the parents in our community, how to expand them doing this work while being a parent. What was that process like for you from doing the TBM work before having a kid to being pregnant, then having the kid? How did that shift your spiritual practice, your TBM practice, your self-care? How did you fit it in? And how did you see the inner child work with a child?
Yeah, so you definitely have a lot less free time. So I have to say self-care is not a super big priority right now even, but I fit it in. Having your partner on board and being supportive and knowing that you need to do your self-care and spiritual practices is so important. So, my husband knows that I'm just a better person if I'm meditating, if I'm doing TBM workshops, if I'm journaling. I'm just a better person. I'm just happier. So I just show up happier in the relationship with him. And then as a mom, I don't look at routines anymore as a daily routine. It's almost like a weekly routine. So I just get in my time 3 times, 4 times a week. Again, just like with his support. And I know that if I have free time, those are the things, there's certain things that I'm going to go to. So if I have an hour, I know, okay, how am I feeling today? Do I need to meditate? Do I need to do a TBM workshop? Do I need to work out? What are those things? I just run through the 5 or 6 things like I like to rotate throughout the week.
I love that too, because it keeps a sense of novelty. If you have that time opening, you have a list you can go to. So you're not sitting there like, well, what should I do? The options are endless. Oh my gosh, blah, blah, blah. And then, people end up scrolling their phones or watching TV and they're like, this isn't what I even wanted to do. But having that list of like, okay, these are the things I can go to when I have that time just for me. And also being flexible about what they are. The days that you're like, this is actually going to feel so nourishing, let me go in and do it on them. I think that's such a cool way to see your schedule and fit it in.
Yeah, it's energizing because I can get what I need in that day also.
So many points during this conversation too. I'm like, she really knows her energy. She knows where things are going to fill up her cup, and she knows what's going to light her up, and then she knows what's going to drain it. Like, it's just so clear how you talk about it. And I think that's such a rare thing. Like, a lot of people don't know where they're draining their energy and where they're not filling up their own cup. Do you think it was from that experimentation phase where you were like trying things out on your own? How did you get so clear of like, this is on the yes side, this is on the no side?
Yeah, I think it was experimentation for sure. And then maybe a few times a year, I'll actually journal about just a random day, and I'll talk about my energy, in the journal. So I'll write about how much energy I had in the day based on what I was doing. I'm still not good with it. I still drink alcohol, so that sucks the life out of me, but sometimes I just want a glass of wine, so it's not perfect, but I think the activities I definitely have down.
I love that you say that too, because a lot of people ask, like, can you be spiritual and drink alcohol? And there's a whole no alcohol movement going on right now. And I think definitely everyone has to do what's best for them. But I do think there is something to allowing yourself to not be so rigid with things. If you authentically are enjoying, dinner with friends and you love the taste of a nice chilled natural red wine, have a glass, like, is that going to create a detriment to your spiritual practice? Probably not. And in fact, you stifling yourself or feeling like, oh God, I really wanted it, but I was strict and I didn't do it, might actually have a more adverse effect. You kind of have to really sink into your energy. But then if you're drinking wine and the next morning you're feeling horrible, let's say you had 3 glasses of wine and you're like, oh my God, and it screwed over your whole next day, well, then maybe reconsider how you're utilizing that. How do you see alcohol with spirituality?
Yeah, I agree. I think it depends on how it affects your body. I don't think I probably process it great, but it's how it affects your body. But I feel like I used to force labels upon myself. So, because I would go through phases of how I was feeling. I'm a pescatarian, I'm a vegetarian, I'm a vegan, I'm this. And now I just eat what I want to eat in the moment. So whatever fuels my body, or if I just want something sweet, or, I just think people should do what's best for them.
I think that's going to be even more true over the next few years. They talk about like the new paradigm and all of that sort of stuff. And I think it's going to help us on the journey of like getting really clear on what is for us uniquely and not subscribing to all the outside messaging and all of that, and understanding like, okay, when someone's talking about like their sober curious journey, are you taking away from that, oh, damn, okay, I have to do that, otherwise I'm not a good spiritual person? Or are you taking away from that, wow, that feels really nice and expansive, I think I want to try it? How does it land in your body when you're hearing about it? Are you using an idea or a concept someone has done that worked for them as punishment against yourself, or are you using that to like enhance yourself too?
Absolutely. Even exercise. So I used to be so jealous of people that ran. I hate running. People get into the zone and it's so meditative almost and relaxing to them and challenging. I hate running. I don't want to run. I think just knowing yourself and also differentiating between something that may be hard and challenging versus you actually genuinely don't enjoy it.
How do you define that difference for yourself?
Sometimes if I'm not sure, I try it a couple times just to know. Especially exercise, if you're trying it over and over, and you probably should be getting a little better at it, or conditioned to how to do it. And I feel like after you try it a few times, if you're not getting that benefit, then kind of move on.
I think that's great advice. Exercise is an interesting one where I almost never want to do it, but I almost always am so glad that I did do it. Maybe sometimes. There are a few times when I'm like, ooh, I can't wait to work out. But most of the time, I'm like, ugh, I have to go like do this physical feat. I don't want to do it. But I think don't so much pay attention to that. Pay more attention to how did you feel doing it, and then after you were done doing it. Do you feel good? Do you feel rejuvenated? Did it give you energy? Even if it was hard, do you feel accomplished? What are those check marks after doing the hard thing? And that can apply for like any hard thing you're going after in life, right? You're not always going to be lit up. I was talking to a friend the other day who's an interior designer, and she's like, I know I need to post more on social. That's how I'm going to expand my clientele. Like, I just feel that's intuitively like what I need to do. And I was like, okay, so do it. And she was like, but I don't want to post on social. Maybe I'm not supposed to do that. And I'm like, no, you just have to get over the hump of actually doing the thing. And then you're going to feel so proud on the other side for moving through that hard thing.
And then sometimes it's just you have to get better at something. So she could take classes on social media or, and then it might feel a little bit more natural. But yeah, I would do like Tracy Anderson or Melissa Wood workouts, and those are challenging. And I would be out of breath and sore the next day, but I would want to do it again. So that was kind of, I think, like my benchmark. There's been things I've done that I want to do again that are hard, and things that are hard that I don't want to do again.
What's your authentic code, by the way?
So it's freedom, flexibility. So mostly with time to spend with my family, myself, my friends, beauty and design. So quality, like cohesive aesthetics, and self-care. So I've kind of expanded self-care into not only for myself, but to try to teach my son practices. So he's almost 2 and I'm trying to teach him some meditation. So it's very cute. So he does some deep breaths and it's very, very cute.
Oh my gosh, I love that. How do you feel like parenting has impacted your sort of vision on your own inner child connection?
I'm almost seeing the world through his eyes sometimes and how I may have felt in certain situations. When we're so small, we obviously don't remember details of things, but I think you guys are always saying that we should imagine how we may have felt or how something could have impacted us. I find myself doing that sometimes. Wow, my circumstances were different. How did I feel about this? And then I try to be, more conscious. So regulating myself, because if I'm not regulated, then anything can be frustrating or stressful as a parent. So he's almost 2. So when he's throwing tantrums, I try to just regulate for both of us.
How do you do that in the moment? Is there a certain practice you lean on or certain breath work? Because I think the in the moment elevation is the hardest. I even notice it with my puppy. When he starts to get all ramped up, I'm like, hey, you can't do that. Yeah. And then we match each other and I'm like, wait a second, I'm the adult. I need to calm this down, get him calm, nice low pets, get his nervous system calm. He's overstimulated. It's great child practice.
Yeah. I think it's easier when I'm home. So it's like if we're in our home environment and he's having a tantrum, I know that he can't control his emotions, so I have to control mine. Again, still learning. This is not every day. Sometimes I'm just like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. But I honestly try to just take deep breaths and stay calm. So if he sees me calm, he knows it's safe to kind of feel his emotions and kind of work through it. It gets definitely stressful when we're out. We live in London, so, when I'm going home on a plane, you just feel so bad for everyone around you. And just, yeah, so it's easier in certain scenarios.
I was thinking about that too on a recent plane ride where we brought the pup, and luckily it was his first plane ride, and like he only barked one time because he was confused. He was like, wow. And we're like, shh. And we're like, oh my God, what if he like started barking like crazy and whatever? And we're like, I don't think he would do that. And then we're like, oh my gosh, what's it going to be like kids one day? Like you can't just give them an anxiety medication to like shut them up on the plane. What do you do with a screaming kid? And we really sat into like, okay, well, like how would we respond? And what do we do in that situation? And also you just have to hope that the people around you give you grace, because kids are kids. They're going to have their big emotions.
My husband is good to say, remind me in the moment, because he knows I'm thinking, okay, what is everyone around us thinking? He says he's really great to say, who cares? It's fine. That's not going to help.
By now, you're starting to get the feel for TBM. Maybe you've heard about our workshops and you're interested in manifestation, but you just don't have the time or energy to sit down and do self-help work. We totally get it. In fact, that's why we created the Daily Practice, which is our massive library of self-hypnosis tracks that you can do anytime without having to jump into a workshop. We call these tracks our Deep Imaginings, or DIs. DIs are different than normal meditations because we designed them using a combination of self-hypnosis techniques, deep theta waves, EMDR-informed tools, and somatic experiencing. A fully loaded formula that is scientifically proven to help you clear your blocks and triggers on a subconscious level, giving you the power to actually create new neural pathways in your brain. So if your boss pisses you off, use our Trigger DI. If you want to feel magnetic before a party or an important meeting, use the Magnetic Self DI. If you're feeling anxious or down on yourself or you need help making a decision, we've got a DI for all of these scenarios and more. You can get full access to the Daily Practice inside the Pathway membership, where you'll also get unlimited access to every workshop, tool, and offering from TBM. The tools in the Pathway membership will support you year-round, whether you're in the worst, a rock bottom, or second worst, a rut, or feeling good and you want to keep the magnetism going. In the Pathway, you'll effectively learn how to become your own manifestation coach, all for less than $1 a day. So even if you're not ready to start a workshop, join the Pathway and start rewriting your neural pathways now to create magnetism. Work through your triggers and get closer to your authentic magnetic self in order to manifest. Use our special code MAGNETIC, all caps, MAGNETIC, to receive $20 off your first TBM purchase. Again, that's all caps, MAGNETIC. Now back to the episode.
What are some of your favorite DIs that you like to use?
Oh, I love the Grace DI. The new one, I love the Validation DI. I don't know, I just think that's so gentle and comforting.
It's like a little pep talk.
It is. If you're having a tough day, that's my go-to. Unblock, Trigger. I download them, basically all of the ones I use, but there's like 12 of them. And I kind of just go through. Any one really kind of does the trick.
Do you make any playlists with them? I've started to make, you can save, I don't know if you guys know this, but in the app version, you can make playlists. So now I'll have like, I need to pick me up and I'll make a playlist of all the DIs that help get me back on whatever energy I need to be on. And I have one for like, okay, big test or big trigger just popped up. Here's all the DIs that work for me best.
I need to try that.
Yeah, try it out.
I love that.
It's good to go to in the moment too of like, wait, what do I need? Oh yeah, this one.
I love the journaling exercises too, because I feel like they really allow me my mind to wander and just to kind of get anything out that I need to get out. The winter challenge, I think, one of the exercises was your ideal day. I ended up journaling about that, and then my husband journaled about it, and then we shared our ideal days. And it was actually so helpful because we talked about, what can we incorporate now? And some of his ideas I liked better than mine. So we just talked about it, and it was a really, really opening exercise for both of us.
It's also good because when you have that framework of like, okay, how would you ideally spend your day? It's often not that unattainable right now. Maybe the level to which you're going to do it isn't as big or grand, but you can do a version of that now. I remember writing this elaborate long morning routine and I'm like, I could probably do this in 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. And it would feel so good to even just get that 30 minutes in. Why don't I try that now? And it's like, I don't have to wait until I have everything set in stone and in place in order to be like, and now I get to have my morning routine. No, it starts now. It starts in these little moments. It starts noticing the places where you have those things that align with your authentic code already with you.
Yeah, I think once I got my authentic code down, it just helped me be in the flow so much more. It's fun. Feeling the energy of kind of what's coming. I mean, everything that we're doing is really fun. Worst case scenario to me is actually fun. I get excited about sometimes the possibilities of the opposite thing. And then I'm almost like let down when I get what I wanted.
You're like, I would have been so good with that other option too.
Exactly. It just takes the emotion out of it, especially if it's like a business decision or yeah, I felt like that's helped me a lot.
What would be your biggest piece of advice for someone who is feeling called in one direction and not maybe getting clarity on should they follow that path or should they jump off that cliff or what they should do on the other side of that? Because I feel like you've had a bunch of cliffs that you've jumped off along the way too.
Yeah, I've always taken action when it was clear to me. I never jumped off the cliff before I knew I wanted to jump off the cliff, if that makes sense. I really waited until the answer was clear. Right now, we're actually contemplating moving to New York City. So the decision's not clear. And we're like, okay, that's fine. We're not going to make the decision now. When it's a little clearer, then we'll make the decision. And we know we can, we rented purposely this year a house so we could pivot, and it's fine. It's giving me a lot more comfort knowing the decision just hasn't presented itself yet, just not ready.
And what does it feel like when you do have those decisions come through where it does feel clear?
I get this excitement around it where it just feels like how I described myself as a child, just like dreamy and like what if, and I'll go down the road of, oh, wow, like this is going to be so great and this is why. And sometimes it'll be something drastic against the other decision, if that makes sense. So something will happen that just makes it really clear. Wow, okay, that's no longer an option.
I also like that mindset that you can kind of let that cliff jumping period bake, so to speak. It's not like if you don't jump off the cliff right now, the cliff has then disappeared and your manifestation's gone. You can allow time for clarity to come in. You can allow time for expansion, for more unblocking, for divine timing, all of those things. You're not going to miss it.
You're not going to miss it.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. This is amazing. So good, so expansive, and definitely got me thinking about doing the worst case scenario DI today.
Yes, that's my favorite one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you all enjoyed that episode as much as we did. And if you're starting to get a feel for this to be magnetic manifestation process, but aren't completely sold yet, let me point you to some of our free offerings. You can check out the expanded podcast episode called How to Manifest Anything You Desire, where Lacey, the founder, and I break down exactly what this process is all about. You can check out The Motivation, which is our testimonial library with thousands of testimonials of people who have manifested wild things using this process. Or you can check out our free mini workshop to find out why you're not manifesting and listen to one of our proprietary deep imagining audios, where it's going to help you drop into your theta state and overwrite low self-worth limiting beliefs. Enjoy. We'll see you next week.